Incredible act of bravery, woman saves one life from fire, unveiling a surprising mafia connection. Abigail Harper's world blurred at the edges. One moment she was resting her head against the cool kitchen counter, savoring a rare stolen moment of quiet with her son Ethan. The next, the air shattered with frantic sirens and chaos rippling through their small Ohio community. Her heart raced not just from fear but from the weight of her reality. Without thinking, she bolted from her home, propelled by old instincts ingrained in her since childhood. The fire across the street billowed in dark clouds, an ominous specter looming over the neighborhood. That familiar panic crept in. Could she truly muster the strength to save someone? The burdens of financial uncertainty loomed like shadows over her, whispering insecurities about her worth as a mother, as a nurse. What did it mean to be brave when every day felt like a battle? Budget cuts had severed her ties with the local hospital. Desolation clawed at her, each bill a reminder of the life she had fought so hard to build. Yet, at that moment, the cries of a child rang out through the smoke. It was a sound that pierced through her own turmoil and compelled her forward. Ethan's voice echoed in her mind, an unshakable tether that drew her to the inferno. The fire danced hungrily, but the thought of a child needing her overshadowed her doubts. She knew she was stepping into darkness, tearing through self-doubt with every determined step. What if she failed? What if she became a case study of foolishness, like stories her mother used to caution her against? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she stepped into the home, heat enveloped her like a shroud, pulses of adrenaline heightened her senses. Rushing past crumbling ceilings and splintered beams, she spotted him, a little boy huddled in fear. With an almighty surge of love, she reached for him, grabbing him just as the house groaned threateningly. They tumbled out, and as they emerged into the night, the cheers of bystanders washed over her. But her victory evaporated with the realization that the boy was not just any child, he was the child of Giovanni, a man whose name was whispered among the community like a ghost story. Suddenly, Abigail felt the eyes of the neighborhood shift. The calls of gratitude morphed into whispers of worry. Would she become tethered to the shadows of this new life or find a way to separate herself entirely? She stared into the boy's innocent eyes, and a shiver of guilt swept through her. Would saving him hold repercussion, weaving her into ties of loyalty she did not wish to embrace? The weight of the legacy of her separated family loomed over her once again as rumors started circulating, twisting her already tenuous credibility. Abigail grappled with the notion that perhaps her blood history of pain and persistence had greater depths than she ever imagined. The looming specter of Giovanni haunted her. She had saved a life, but at what cost? Hesitation gnawed at her resolve, eroding any clarity as she found herself standing on a precipice. If she continued down this path, would she be brave or merely a pawn in a game she never asked to play? The flames faded behind her, but the fire inside kept building, pushing her to confront the unthinkable. And as shadows lengthened, the only certainty was that her fragile world was on the brink of an unending battle. What lay next was unknown, lurking just beyond reach, daring her to make a choice that would ignite an unforeseen conflict. Abigail rubbed her temples as she walked back into the now silent house, the adrenaline of the night's events beginning to wane. Even as the flickering remnants of the fire danced in her memory, the gravity of her decision tightened like a vice around her chest. Giovanni's name ricocheted in her mind, and the walls that sheltered her from fear now felt like prison bars. She glanced at Ethan, sound asleep in his room. The peaceful rise and fall of his little body juxtaposed sharply against the swirling tumult within her. Had she done the right thing? In saving that child, had she unknowingly entwined her fate in a dangerous web of loyalty and criminal ties? A shiver ran down her spine as she recalled the eyes of the onlookers turning from admiration to suspicion, wondering if she was now part of something she could barely comprehend. She paced the kitchen, her thoughts racing. The moment of bravery had felt instinctual, yet now it threatened to become a burden. What was it about the act of saving a life that forced her to confront the darker aspects of humanity? Memories of her training as a nurse flooded her, a discipline that had taught her to save lives while sidestepping moral hazards. However, working in a respectable hospital offered a stark contrast to the underworld whispers surrounding Giovanni's life. Abigail needed to dissect her motives. The question gnawed at her: did her bravery come from a place of courage, or was it driven by isolation and the desperate need for validation? Each small victory in her past, the triumphs over personal struggles, could easily feel overshadowed now. In moments like these, did valor stem from genuine fortitude or the throes of extinguished doubt? She shook her head, trying to dispel the fog of confusion. She had known bravery in the hospital courtyard as she advocated for underfunded healthcare, but now it seemed that merely saving a child glorified her as a hero while painting an even more complex portrait, one that intertwined her identity with Giovanni's ominous reputation. There had to be a way to stand firm amidst the chaos. Her heart raced again, but this time with resolve. Maybe her path lay in taking control of this narrative, redefining her role. Rather than slipping quietly into the shadows cast by the mob, what if she stepped into the light? She could use her experience to protect not only her son but others in need, possibly even challenge the powers that lingered in the dark, yet a seismic shift felt beyond her reach. The challenge would demand more than mere courage. She would have to dig deep and access every ounce of strength she possessed. Confrontation with the shadows of Giovanni's world was unavoidable and would require a calculated approach. She couldn't do this alone. Finding a mentor or ally who understood the terrain might be key. The thought of reaching out to an old colleague for guidance flashed through her mind. She had respected Dr. Rowe's integrity and prowess, and he might be able to provide insight into navigating a life shadowed by criminal ties. But would he support her quest, or would he recoil from the dangers that came with it? The clock ticked loudly in the quiet room, emphasizing the urgent need for action. She pulled out her phone, but hesitated. Each moment spent in inaction was just more time spent submerged in uncertainty. Abigail steeled her resolve, knowing that bold decisions lay ahead, both personal and professional. As she dialed Dr. Rowe's number, her heart raced even while a sliver of confidence began to illuminate her path. She knew that this call would alter the trajectory of her life in ways she had yet to fully grasp. What awaited her on the other end could either renew her purpose or plunge her further into the abyss. With breath held, she pressed the call button, ready to confront the unknown consequences of her recent choice. Abigail's heart raced as the phone rang, each tone vibrating with potential repercussions. Would Dr. Rowe's voice guide her toward clarity, or would it push her deeper into the shadows? She fought against the instinct to retreat into her safe cocoon, the one she had woven over the years as a protective barrier from life's unpredictability. Finally, the line connected, and she heard his familiar tone, steady and cordial. "Abigail? Is everything all right?" His warmth momentarily disarmed her. She took a breath, steadying herself. "Hi, Dr. Rowe. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." "Not at all. What's on your mind?" The lack of judgment in his voice encouraged her to plunge forth, even as doubt clawed at the edges of her rising resolve. "It's about something that happened last night. I was involved in an emergency, a fire." Her voice caught slightly at the word, a reminder of the weight of her actions. "And I saved a child." There was a pause, and she imagined Dr. Rowe processing her words. "That's commendable, Abigail. You're a hero. What's really troubling you?" Abigail's heart sank. Dr. Rowe always had an uncanny ability to see through her replies. She hesitated again. This moment, vulnerable yet empowering, was defined by the crossing into a world she felt unprepared for. "I'm worried about the implications it's had for me and, for my son." "You're afraid of being thrust into a complicated situation," he said gently, and she could hear the concern in his tone. "What kind of situation?" She felt the heat of determination build in her chest, urging her to speak the truth that lingered uneasily in her mind. "There's a man involved. Giovanni." She felt the name hang in the air between them, pulsing with unspoken danger. A moment of silence filled the gap. Giovanni, the criminal? Yes. I didn't know when I helped the child, but now. I feel entangled in something far beyond me. His voice returned, a blend of curiosity and caution. What are you thinking of doing? I want to understand this world better. I need to find a way to stand my ground and protect Ethan, but I can't navigate it blindly. I was hoping you might help me. She stumbled over her words, each one marking a step into a territory rife with cautionary tales. Abigail could almost hear the wheels turning in Dr. Rowe's head. You know the risks. But if you're determined to learn, I may be able to provide some resources. Hope flickered within her, tempered by the knowledge of the storm looming on the horizon. Resources? What kind? Connections, training, even insight about navigating the criminal underworld. But you must promise to remain cautious. With that, Abigail felt the glow of ambition ignite a new fire in her spirit, one less about the past and more about her future. I promise. As they fleshed out her potential path, the strategies for safety mingling with professional development, Abigail realized what she hadn't before. Bravery wasn't just a single moment, it was a series of choices to actively confront and reshape her life's narrative. With each outline Dr. Rowe provided, her confidence grew. Yet beneath the surface, a question loomed larger: could she truly confront the darkness that had encroached upon her life and emerge unscathed? When they finally ended the call, Abigail's heart surged with a mix of fear and determination. She would fight back, redefine her identity, and carve a space of safety for herself and Ethan, but as she prepared herself for the next steps, she felt the familiar pang of uncertainty return. How far was she willing to go to reclaim her narrative? Would the risks reveal her hidden strengths or plunge her deeper into the life she so feared? Engulfed by these thoughts, she glanced at the shadowed corners of her house. Was she ready to confront not just the outside world, but also the fragments of her past that lingered within? As a crack of thunder echoed in the distance, a formidable storm brewing beyond her windows, Abigail understood that the true test loomed closer than she imagined. She needed to prepare, and fast. What awaited her wasn't merely a confrontation with Giovanni's world, but with the aspects of her own strength she had yet to uncover. The morning sun streamed into Abigail's kitchen, illuminating the remnants of last night's storm, discarded papers and quickly emptied coffee cups. She clutched her steaming mug, staring blankly at the articles spread across the table. Headlines screamed the danger and drama that now punctuated her existence. Incredible act of bravery seemed to mock her, as she felt anything but brave. She took a moment to absorb it, acknowledging the weight of what she had done, yet internally grappling with the specter of what lay ahead. After the phone call with Dr. Rowe, her mind had been flooded with thoughts of preparation and action. He had given her a path, albeit one fraught with peril. But was she ready to walk it? A mixture of fear and adrenaline surged through her as she flipped through the tangled mess of articles, many centered on Giovanni, painting him as both a criminal mastermind and a misunderstood man. The duality baffled her. How could one person embody such dissonance? Gradually, a plan began to form. Abigail knew that understanding Giovanni's world was paramount. She recalled Dr. Rowe's mention of resources and connections. She needed to delve into this world, not merely as an observer, but as a strategic participant. It was about protection, about finding the grit she hadn't acknowledged within herself, but it was also about the unsettling undercurrents of morality she felt gnawing at her conscience. Refusing to run from the looming threat, she reached for her laptop, her fingers trembling with a mix of anxiety and resolve as she typed, "Understanding the criminal underworld." Hours passed in a blur of navigation through articles and forums, exposing her to strategies employed by those in precarious positions, survival tactics for navigating murky waters. It was an education she never signed up for, but now felt essential for her survival. Amidst the chaos of research, a realization pierced through the haze: knowledge was power. Each article she consumed peeled back layers of naivety, exposing her to psychological tactics often employed by those who operated in shadows. She absorbed strategies about how criminals manipulated perception, cunning tactics that could allow her to shield Ethan from Giovanni's influence. Abigail took a breath, pushing aside her nagging doubts, silently promising herself to engage this new reality with calculated bravery and intelligence. What had once been a sanctuary of ignorance must transform into a citadel of understanding. She recognized that with each piece of knowledge gained, she dismantled the fortress of fear that had kept her cornered for too long. The day slipped into evening, and a threadbare resolve began sparking within her, the burning need to act, to safeguard her son while reclaiming her own identity in the process. She couldn't ignore the shadows threatening her family. They felt insistent, demanding presence and agency in her life. As she prepared for her first meeting with Dr. Rowe the following day, she felt a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. Her determination clashed with the emotional fatigue weighing down on her. What he would teach her could either empower her to navigate this life effectively or lead her into deeper, treacherous waters. Still, she steeled herself, grappling with the reality that knowledge also bore responsibility. The doorbell rang, snapping Abigail from her thoughts. Heart racing, she approached the door, catching her breath and centering herself. Revealing her resolve would mean confronting not only external adversities but shifting the internal landscape of her identity as well. Before swinging the door open, she realized it was time to embrace the uncomfortable, to stand boldly against whatever awaited her. As she opened the door, her determination solidified. Giovanni's world would no longer remain an ominous unknown. It was a chapter waiting to be written. What lay beyond this threshold would test her in ways she hadn't yet anticipated, but it would also grant her the power to determine her own destiny. And with that thought echoing in her mind, she faced the evening, a metaphorical storm, one that felt less ominous now that she was prepared to weather it. Just outside, an unfamiliar figure stood waiting, with promises or threats held tight in the folds of his jacket. Would he offer further insights into this treacherous world, or was he another complication in her attempt to regain control of her life? As uncertainty quaked at the edges of her confidence, Abigail took a deep breath and met his gaze, understanding that she had crossed the threshold into uncharted territory. Abigail's stomach knotted as she took in the figure before her. The man appeared to be in his late 40s, a sturdy build dressed in a dark, fitted jacket that accentuated the underlying tension of his posture. His eyes bore an intensity that paralleled her own unresolved fear. This was no random visitor. He was embedded in a world that had begun to occupy her thoughts and dictate her actions. Abigail, he greeted in a low voice, as if the very name carried a weight. She nodded, hoping her composure would keep her from betraying the storm inside. "Who are you?" "Patrick. I've been sent to guide you," he said curtly, as if wrapping himself in the cloak of authority. And in that moment, she grappled with the mix of hope and apprehension. Did she genuinely want guidance from someone like him? "Guide me?" she echoed, both skeptical and curious. He stepped closer, scanning the surroundings as if to encapsulate the world wrapped up in her modest home. "Dr. Rowe believes you have potential. But to grasp it fully, you need to understand Giovanni's world, from the ground up." Abigail's heart raced. She recalled the ominous articles she had pored over just hours ago, absorbing tactics that felt dangerously close to betrayal. Was she really willing to entangle herself in this murky underworld, all under the pretense of protection? "What do you know about Giovanni?" she pressed, trying to gauge the depth of his knowledge, his motivations. "He's a man of many layers," Patrick explained, a slight edge creeping into his voice. "A criminal mastermind and a family man. Those who underestimate him pay dearly. You must learn to navigate through his duality." The words resonated with the conflict brewing inside her. If Giovanni could manipulate perception to his advantage, how could she discern the truth in that duality? "What does this have to do with me?" she questioned, her resolve hardening. "I'm not looking to dive deeper into criminal affairs. I want to protect my son." "Which is why you need to step somewhere you're not comfortable," he shot back, voice steady. "To do that, you must immerse yourself in the very fabric of these networks." Abigail felt the walls of her carefully constructed life quake under the pressure of his statement. She had ventured this far, inching toward the precipice of where her identity shifted from mere survivor to proactive defender. If knowledge was power, her pursuit of understanding had to extend beyond articles and theories now manifesting as reality. "Fine," she declared, her voice steady despite the internal turmoil. "What do we do next?" Patrick's lips curled into a knowing smirk, his eyes sparkling with approval. "We start with connections. There are meetings held in the shadows, discussions that shape the very framework you wish to dismantle. I can escort you there." Panic coursed through her. The prospect of actively stepping into a world of shadows was a daunting leap. But perhaps it was the only option left. She had a choice, to shrink back, allowing her fears to define her, or to confront the risks involved and transform them into her catalyst for empowerment. "Let us do it," Abigail affirmed, her voice firmer than she felt. As they categorized the intricacies of the map laid ahead, she understood this was an initiation, a rite of passage into realms buzzing with danger but also rich with knowledge. She recognized that she would need a far more profound grasp of her limits and values in this pursuit. The air crackled with urgency as the evening darkened around them. The time had come to face not only Giovanni's world but also her own moral boundaries. What compromises would she be forced to make in her quest for truth? Suddenly, Abigail's phone buzzed in her pocket, the sound slicing through the tension like a blade. She withdrew it, heart racing. The screen lit up, revealing a message from Ethan's school, a warning about a potential threat. Abigail's body surged with adrenaline, intertwining dread and determination. The evening had morphed from just an invitation into a realm of shadows. It was now inexplicably tied to her son's safety. As she looked up at Patrick, realization struck. They were no longer merely confronting Giovanni now, they were also racing against time. Would her emerging resolve and newfound alliances be enough to shield her family from the very darkness she sought to understand? Abigail's heart thudded in her chest, each pulse amplifying the urgency of the moment. She stared at the message from Ethan's school, her mind racing. What kind of threat? She felt a surge of instinct she didn't know she'd cultivated, navigating between the protective mother and the reluctant warrior she had begun to embrace. "I need to go," she said, her voice sharper than before. The fear that had once paralyzed her now fueled her resolve. "Yes, the first rule of this world is to be aware of your surroundings," Patrick replied, his demeanor shifting from authoritative to encouraging. "We'll go together, but you need to focus. You must learn to trust your gut feelings." Abigail nodded, her resolve crystallizing. As they slipped into the shadows of the neighborhood, her sensory perception heightened. Every sound resonated, every shadow became a potential threat. She was teetering on an edge of catastrophic possibilities, each step tethering her closer to Giovanni's world and away from the mundane reality that once defined her life. "Patrick, what about your connections? Can they give us any intel?" she asked, her thoughts spinning wildly as they moved. "They're more than just contacts," he confirmed, a hint of admiration in his voice. "They're a network of survival. But be cautious, trust is earned, not given." The dichotomy of their journey haunted her. Each step deeper into this underbelly felt irrevocable, yet the thought of losing Ethan sparked a fire within her. If she was to protect him, aligning with these shadows might just be her greatest act of bravery. Arriving at a dimly lit alley, Patrick gestured for her to wait. The air was thick, tension palpable as he slid into conversation with a figure cloaked in darkness, an exchange masked by the shrouded environment. Abigail remained on the outskirts, her instincts heightened. The pulsating nightlife thrived nearby, but they were tucked under layers of secrecy, her heart tethered to the very real dangers that loomed above. "What is happening?" she whispered, pushing aside the anxiety curling in her gut. "Gathering information, just a moment," he replied quietly, but her mind spun with questions. How did he know who to trust? What were these so-called connections really about? Each layer they peeled back seemed to invite more chaos, the murmurs intensified, and when Patrick turned back to her, his expression was grave. "There is a plot against Giovanni. If he discovers your involvement, it could jeopardize your family." Her breath hitched. "What can I do?" You'll need to approach the right people, those who have their ears close to the ground. Soon, they'll know your face, and you must gain their approval while drawing the line on what you want to betray. As reality crashed around her, Ethan's threat, Giovanni's dangerous realm, and her newfound identity, Abigail could feel herself being reshaped. In this dark theater of manipulation and power plays, she had the opportunity to reclaim agency, not just for herself but for her son's future. "Let us do this," she said, steeling herself. The narrative of her life was shifting. She could sense the power within her beginning to stir, the cell of threats fortified behind her. Abigail advanced with Patrick, each step deepening her understanding of shadows that couldn't just be fought but understood. She was growing more than she had anticipated, embracing a powerful duality of resilience and cunning. Without warning, a loud crash echoed through the alley, jolting them both. They exchanged anxious glances. Patrick's expression narrowed with focus. "We need to move." As packets of adrenaline coursed through her veins, Abigail steeled her resolve, the realization dawning that the true challenge lay ahead. There, in the dark, she would confront both the unknown threats to her son and the very nature of her newfound self. What would that confrontation reveal about her abilities, and what lengths would she go to protect Ethan? She felt the gnawing weight of that question as they turned a corner and plunged deeper into the night, the world of shadows promising both danger and revelation. In this moment, Abigail was no longer just a mother, she was evolving into a formidable force with the potential to dismantle an empire. But in the depths of that evolution lay a question that loomed larger with each passing moment: who was she becoming? Abigail's senses danced between alertness and dread, the air heavy with potential violence. They turned into another shadowy intersection, each step echoing her internal transformation. The dim, flickering lights overhead cast distorted shadows that reminded her of every moment she had felt powerless, each flicker a ghost of her old self. Now, fueled by a potent cocktail of fear and determination, she felt stronger and more fearless than she ever had before. "Stay close," Patrick murmured, his voice low and serious. They were approaching a tavern, a reputed gathering place for those in the loop about Giovanni's affairs. Abigail's pulse quickened. Every instinct screamed at her to retreat to safety, but she pushed against it. What lay before her was more than just a potential confrontation, it was a pivotal moment in the reclaiming of her agency. Inside the tavern, the atmosphere was thick with tension and the sweet scent of spilled liquor. A cluster of men surrounded a small table, deep in discussion. Their laughs were hearty but lacked warmth, they layered conversations with unsaid threats, widening Abigail's understanding of the world she was stepping into. She felt like an outsider looking in, wrestling with her sense of belonging and the sinister pulse of those present. "Remember, Abigail," Patrick said, pulling her focus back in, "these are not friends. They deal in power, not goodwill." She nodded, feeling both apprehensive and curious. What made people choose this life? Was it the pursuit of power, security, or something darker? Analyzing their motives became a mental game for her, a way to sharpen her instincts as she navigated her role. "Approach Charlie," Patrick instructed, gesturing toward a man who leaned back with an air of lazy authority. His demeanor was that of someone who relished the power he wielded, there was an unsettling confidence in the way he surveyed the room. He'll know where the loyalties lie. You need to impress him. As they navigated through the crowd, Abigail's heart raced. She could feel the weight of eyes on her, measuring her worth, assessing if she was worthy of their time. At that moment, she recalled the countless arguments she'd had in her own life, whether over trivial family matters or her crumbling marriage. They seemed insignificant compared to the stakes here. "Charlie," Patrick greeted, his voice steady as they stood before the man who loomed above them with an air of menace. "This is Abigail." "Nice to meet you, Abigail," Charlie remarked, his eyes piercing through her facade. "You here to play in the big leagues?" The question was laced with mockery that stung more than she anticipated. But she wouldn't flinch. Instead, she leaned into the moment, channeling everything she had learned in the last few days, the grit she hadn't known she possessed. "I'm here to protect what matters to me, Charlie," she said, locking eyes with him. I need information about Giovanni and the threats against my son. His brow quirked, interest piqued. A mother, is it? This could be delicious. With each word she shared, she could feel the duality of her situation, a mother desperate to save her child and a player in a strategic game where lives were mere chips. Your son must be very precious to you, then, Charlie said, tilting his head in curiosity. You must know, choices here have repercussions. Join us, and you'll need to commit fully. The gravity of his words settled over her. What would that mean? What would she be required to sacrifice? But amidst the doubts and fears, she also understood something significant began to settle within her. The clearer vision of her identity was emerging, an identity woven with threads of resilience. As she weighed her options, jolted by the weight of expectation, a sudden shift in the tavern atmosphere rattled her. A commotion erupted at the entrance, and all eyes turned toward the door. The tension crackled, heightening her adrenaline as the reality of her situation sunk deeper. In that moment of chaos, Abigail felt a surge of clarity. She was determined to not just play a role but to redefine it on her own terms. Was she truly ready to alter the course of her life? What she didn't expect was that her confrontation with Giovanni's world would soon dance dangerously close to her family and the secrets she had long buried, making the stakes personal in ways she never imagined possible. Would she emerge from this path changed irrevocably? And would she still recognize herself when the dust finally settled? The answers were racing toward her with swift inevitability, and Abigail was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. Abigail's pulse thrummed in her ears as the tavern door swung open, light from the street cutting through the murky interior like a knife. Shadows flitted across the faces of those around her, revealing a charged anticipation that clung to the air. The arrival of a newcomer sent waves of tension ricocheting between the patrons. She found herself drawn to the scene, her instincts firing on all cylinders. The noise crescendoed into a piercing silence as a tall figure stepped through the entrance. An elegance enveloped him that contradicted the roughness of the establishment. His dark clothes clung to him, accentuating a sense of authority. With a commanding presence, he dismissed the chaotic energy of the room. Abigail instinctively sensed that this man was significant. Something told her he existed at the core of this intricate web of power. Giovanni, Charlie declared, leaning back in his chair, nonchalance bleeding into arrogance. Abigail caught the flicker of panic in Patrick's eyes. The reality of her situation felt more immediate, it clawed at her. She could sense the impending danger, a dark undercurrent that wrapped around her thoughts. She and Patrick had infiltrated the lion's den, and the lion had arrived. Abigail's instinct screamed for her to retreat, yet she stood rooted, tightening her grip around the small knife tucked into her boot. This was no time for hesitation. The stakes had escalated, and with it, her resolve solidified. Was this the moment she needed to confront this shadowy figure behind the murky veil of Giovanni's operations? Could she leverage her desperation into something potent enough to negotiate her son's safety? As Giovanni settled into the tension enveloping the tavern, his gaze swept to Charlie, then briefly assessed Abigail. "What's all this about?" he asked, his voice smooth, laced with an undisguised challenge. Abigail's heart raced at the realization that she had become part of a game far dangerous than she had imagined. Determined, Abigail took a step forward, pushing past her instincts of self-preservation. "I'm here to negotiate," she said, each word tinged with the steel of newfound conviction. "I need to know what you plan to do next." My son Giovanni's smile twisted into a predatory grin, cutting her off mid-sentence. "Let me guess, you think you can barter with me through loss? A tragic story of maternal love?" He regarded her with condescension, but a thread of intrigue lingered in his gaze. "What makes you think I care about your problems?" The emotions that churned within her battled for dominance: fear, anger, desperation, but they coalesced into a singular focus. "Because I want to let you take another life," she declared, her voice a smooth, unyielding edge. As whispers circulated, the reality of her threat settled over the patrons like a heavy cloud. Unexpectedly, Abigail recognized that her fear had transformed into fuel. Here, declarations like hers took on new meaning. She could be a player, not just a pawn, and that realization began to redefine her in real time. Bold, Giovanni noted with a raised eyebrow, his amusement evident. What's your game, Abigail? The mother versus the criminal mastermind? His laughter rang hollow, but his eyes sparked with genuine curiosity. Let's get to the heart of it. Do you think you have something I want? Maybe this wasn't just about personal stakes. Maybe she could leverage intelligence, find pressure points, and if she played her cards right gather allies in the most unexpected places. More than you know, she replied, the words slipping out with confidence she hadn't anticipated. Even in this dangerous setting, her mind raced with possibilities. If she could offer him something valuable to obtain her son's safety, perhaps there was a route she hadn't considered. As the air between them crackled with tension, Abigail prepared to navigate the precarious path that lay ahead. The responses she elicited could ripple through the underworld, sending her tumbling toward outcomes unforeseen. In this moment, the clarity she had found was a sharp blade against the darkness. Would she discover the depths of her own strength? Or would she unravel in the throes of this dangerous dance? And as whispers of Giovanni's past began to surface around them, Abigail realized she was on the precipice of much more than a negotiation. Perhaps in confronting her fears here, she would unlock secrets that could change everything. But was she truly prepared for the revelation that might await her? Abigail clenched her jaw, pushing against the tide of fear that threatened to overwhelm her. Giovanni's gaze bore into her, his interest palpable, yet it was tinged with danger. What do you have, Abigail? Something solid, something that can sway me, he prodded, his voice inviting yet layered with menace. The stakes were unbearably high. Thoughts raced through her mind, they felt scattered, chaotic. She needed something concrete to barter with a weapon forged from the fragments of desperation and hope that now filled the pit of her stomach. Flashes of her son's face, smiling and innocent, pushed her forward as a brazen idea flickered in her mind. I know things, she began slowly, focusing her voice to sound steadier than it felt. I have information about a group that wants to undermine your operations. They're planning something big. Giovanni's expression shifted, intrigue peaked. Go on, he urged, leaning slightly forward as if she held the key to something he had long sought. An involuntary shiver ran down Abigail's spine. Was she treading too deep into dangerous waters? Drawing a deep breath, she steadied herself and forged ahead. They plan to cut you off. Take away your resources. You'll lose the leverage you hold. The truth of her words ignited a flicker of confidence within her. Despite the chaos swirling around her, she saw a glimmer of control budding. This was her moment, she had to wield it wisely. Interesting, Giovanni replied, amusement threading through his fascination. But why would you care about my operation, Abigail? Your son's safety could very well depend on you keeping me alive. She clenched her fists, her mind racing against the clock. Because I want to help you for the sake of my son. I can't let them ruin everything, and I need someone like you to protect him. Protect him? He chuckled, his voice dripping with skepticism. You think I'm the hero here? No, dear Abigail, I am very much the villain. His laughter ricocheted through the tavern as people exchanged glances, uncertain of how they should measure her. With each chuckle, Abigail felt a new wave of defiance barricade her fears. Then be the villain who wins his battles not at the expense of my son's life. The notes of desperation still lingered in her words, but they were grounded by resolve. Giovanni's expression was inscrutable, eyes narrowing as he regarded her with a careful calculation. The challenge she laid before him hovered between them, an unspoken negotiation echoing like the rising tension in the room. The other patrons shifted in their seats, drawn into the drama unfolding before their eyes. Very well, he finally said, voice silky yet tinged with danger. Perhaps you do indeed have something valuable. But, should I find out you are lying? The threat hung heavy in the air, punctuating his final words. Abigail swallowed hard, facing the repercussions of her gamble. The stakes were unfathomably high, and it was a path lined with shadows and thorns. The tiny ember of courage within her blazed with conviction. Perhaps this was a fatal misstep, but it was one she had to take. As the whirlwind of possibility unspooled in her mind, she understood the weight of her choice. She could tip the scales in her favor not by simply offering information but by positioning herself as indispensable to Giovanni. And in the depths of the shifting power dynamics playing out in the tavern, she felt the need for deeper knowledge awaken inside her. If she could unlock the keys to Giovanni's world, she could unravel not only his strengths but his vulnerabilities as well. What if, beneath the arrogance and bravado, Giovanni held fragile alliances that could be exploited? What if by gaining his trust, she could delve further into the labyrinth of the underworld that trapped her son? And as Abigail stood there, poised between danger and opportunity, she realized this was not merely about survival but transformation. The time had come to delve deeper into the dark underbelly she had now engaged with. Her heart thumped with a mixture of terror and rising determination. What critical secrets might she uncover if she dared to keep stepping forward? A new plan began to form, but would it demand more than she was willing to give? Driven by raw survival, she prepared herself for the unexpected journey ahead. The real revelations were just beginning, and she wasn't sure where they might lead. Abigail stood on the precipice of uncertainty, the words she had spoken sending ripples through the blistering silence of the tavern. She had crossed a line that swept her into Giovanni's dangerous orbit, yet instead of fear, a solid resolve coursed through her veins. In a world fraught with shadows, she had seized the narrative of her life, days passed in a whirlwind of clandestine meetings and whispered conversations. Abigail embraced her duality not just as a mother but as an emerging player in the underworld that threatened to consume her and Ethan's existence. Through Patrick, she acquired insights into Giovanni's empire, learning to navigate the labyrinthine connections of loyalty and betrayal that defined his world. Power had a language, one Abigail was rapidly learning to speak. She meticulously absorbed every scrap of knowledge about Giovanni's operations, becoming a conduit of information that bordered on invaluable. Hours spent poring over maps of territory and budgets turned into conversations that spanned strategic moves, each discussion reinforcing her importance within this precarious web. One evening, as she sat with Patrick, a crucial realization settled into her consciousness. She had evolved from a frightened woman clinging to survival to a proactive advocate for her son's safety. No longer reflecting merely on the demands of motherhood, she recognized her strength to confront darkness and negotiate terms built on mutual respect rather than fear. "Your insights are sharp, Abigail," Patrick said, breaking her thoughts. "Giovanni is beginning to notice the potential you bring to the table." His words stirred something deep within her. "Then it's time I presented a plan," she replied, a calm confidence resonating in her tone. Days later, the momentous occasion arrived. Abigail secured a meeting with Giovanni, who had come to acknowledge her intertwined fate as pivotal to his operations. The gravity of the situation bore down on her, the time for negotiation was here. "You've come a long way," Giovanni stated as they entered his expansive office, the walls adorned with images entwined in both triumph and darkness. "What's weighing on your mind?" "I've been analyzing our mutual interests," Abigail began, her heart steadied by the knowledge she now possessed. "Threats remain from external groups wanting to undermine your power, but I propose a strategic coupling. You will gain valuable intel, and I will be the buffer between you and potential enemies." Each word flowed, building a bridge that solidified her role as more than just a mere informant. Giovanni regarded her closely, eyes narrowing in contemplative calculation. "You believe there's value in our alliance?" "More than you may realize. In return for protection for my son, I am willing to engage actively in this partnership." Abigail could feel a shift. She was no longer just requesting safety but confidently asserting her stance, and it felt liberating. Giovanni chuckled, the sound echoing ominously. "A mother who understands power dynamics. Delightfully intriguing." As the tension unfurled within their conversation, Abigail recognized that this was the catalyst she had been waiting for. The sense of control she yearned for began to crystallize around her, offering the empowerment she had not anticipated from this dark alliance. The days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, Abigail proved herself indispensable. Intelligence flowed between them, Giovanni's operations thrived under Abigail's calculated insights. Giovanni's admiration morphed into trust, offering her a platform to stand firmly in this dangerous world without being consumed by it. Then came the turning point. An unexpected conflict arose, and unspoken tensions erupted into the open. The external threat looming over Giovanni's territory materialized, targeting Ethan's school with ominous foreboding. "Giovanni, there's a breach," Abigail warned urgently, her pulse quickening as she relayed the unfolding threats. "We need to act now." For the first time, Abigail found herself directly shaping the narrative. They coordinated a countermeasure, employing tactics she had developed through fatigue and necessity. In the trenches of darkness, she sought to protect not only her son but also to shield Giovanni's empire from collapse. The confrontation that followed exploded with intensity, leaving a trail of chaos that confirmed Abigail's resolve. With each strategic move, she transformed the narrative, illuminating her potential to become a formidable force. By the time the dust settled, Abigail emerged not merely as a survivor but as an architect of her destiny, proving her strength and stripping away the shadows that had once confined her. Giovanni offered her a place alongside him, not as a mere pawn but as an equal. "I knew you were more than what the world wished to see, Abigail," he stated, respect threaded through his tone, a recognition of her unwavering growth. Stepping out into the daylight after the storm, Abigail felt reborn. Each heartbeat resonated with the satisfaction of having conquered her fears. She had transformed her life from a fragile cascade of uncertainty into a fortress built on resilience and quiet power. She envisioned her future, not just as a mother but as a woman who defined the contours of her own narrative, one that would solidify her son's safety and fortify her own identity, and with that clarity came a sense of fulfillment. The labyrinth had become a pathway to purpose. Her story was now one of strength and triumph, a reminder of the indomitable spirit that broke barriers and ignited hope within the shadows. Abigail had finally achieved the realization that she, too, was a formidable force ready to face whatever came next. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that redefine the meaning of strength and resilience. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover these inspiring tales. Comment your reactions and theories about this extraordinary conclusion, and share your thoughts on Abigail's inspiring transformation. And finally, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this incredible journey of personal overcoming. Don't wait even one more second to share.